I had been meticulously planning this trip for months, down to the smallest details. My parents had always longed to visit Japan, a dream they never got to fulfill due to financial constraints. It was something they spoke about wistfully, something they believed was forever out of reach. But I wanted to change that. After years of careful saving, I was finally able to surprise them with an extravagant, all-expenses-paid vacation. First-class flights, a luxurious five-star hotel in the heart of Tokyo, and a private guided tour to make sure they experienced everything in the best way possible. I even booked a ticket for myself so we could share this once-in-a-lifetime journey together. It was supposed to be a heartfelt gift, something special to give back to the people who raised me. At least that was the plan. On the morning of our departure, I pulled up to my parents' house, grinning with excitement. They were already waiting outside, their suitcases neatly stacked beside them. My mom was practically bouncing on her heels, unable to contain her excitement, while my dad had this proud, satisfied look as if he couldn't wait to tell everyone about the incredible trip his son had gifted him. But then I noticed something strange. Standing next to them, gripping a duffel bag, was my brother Jake. I frowned. Oh, what's he doing here? My mom's face lit up even more. Oh, we didn't tell you. She patted Jake's arm fondly. Your brother is coming instead of you. I blinked, certain I had misheard her. What? Jake smirked. Yeah, man. Mom and Dad decided I should go instead. You know, I've been super stressed lately. Stressed? Jake? The same Jake who hadn't held a job in 2 years? The one who spent his days lounging in the basement, playing video games and mooching off our parents? He somehow needed a luxurious vacation more than the person who actually paid for it? I turned back to my mom, expecting her to correct this ridiculous situation. Instead, she just smiled sweetly and said, Honey, you already travel for work sometimes, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience for Jake. He really needs this. I looked to my dad, hoping for support. He simply shrugged. It's already decided. Let's go. We don't want to be late. That was it. Like I had no say in the matter. Like it was their trip to do with as they pleased. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. A flood of emotions crashed over me. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. After everything I had done, after all the planning, the saving, the thoughtfulness, this was how they repaid me? Treating me like an ATM, tossing me aside as soon as a more convenient option presented itself? But I didn't explode. I didn't argue. I simply exhaled and forced a smile. All right, let's go. The entire drive to the airport, Jake sat in the back seat, absolutely giddy, rambling on about all the anime merchandise he planned to buy and how he couldn't wait to indulge in the luxury I had arranged. My mom laughed, encouraging him, while my dad occasionally chimed in with travel tips. I kept my eyes on the road, staying silent. When we finally arrived at the terminal, they eagerly stepped out, stretching and chatting, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I popped the trunk so they could grab their luggage. My mom kissed my cheek. We'll send you pictures. Love you, sweetie. Jake grinned. Thanks for the free trip, man. My dad clapped me on the back. You're a good son. That was the moment I smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since they pulled this stunt, because they had no idea what was coming. I watched as they walked toward the entrance, their excitement tangible. Then, with a calm certainty, I pulled out my phone, opened the airline app, and with a few taps, canceled their one-way tickets. Gone, just like that. As I pulled away from the curb, I waited. It didn't take long. My phone buzzed before I even exited the parking lot. A text from my mom. Honey, there's a problem with the tickets. The airline says they were canceled. I smirked. Oh, really? That's strange. Another text, this time more urgent. Call me. Now. I let the phone ring as I merged onto the highway. Then the next text arrived, this time from my dad. Did you mess something up with the booking? Fix this. There it was. The demanding tone I knew all too well. I let them stew for a few minutes, picturing them at the check-in counter, flustered, scrambling to understand how their perfect, free vacation had suddenly vanished. Finally, I replied, Oh, yeah, I canceled everything. Hope Jake enjoys his trip. The response was immediate. Mom, what do you mean you canceled it? Dad, get back here now and fix this. Jake, dude, what's happening? I chuckled as I took the exit toward my apartment. I could just imagine the chaos unfolding. My mom frantically arguing with the airline staff, demanding they fix this mistake. My dad checking his credit card balance, realizing he didn't have nearly enough to rebook everything. And Jake, standing there, confused and helpless, finally grasping that for once in his life, something wasn't being handed to him. Then, my phone rang again. Mom. This time I picked up. Before I could even speak, she shrieked, "You canceled the trip? Why?" "Oh, I don't know," I said coolly. "Maybe because you stole my vacation and gave it to Jake?" She scoffed. "We didn't steal anything. We made a decision as a family." "No," I corrected. "You made a decision without me, after I paid for everything." "It was for the best," she insisted. "Jake needed this more than you." "Then Jake can pay for it himself." I shot back. Silence. For the first time, she had no response. Then she tried again, her tone shifting to something falsely sweet. "Honey, let's not overreact. Just rebook the flights, and we'll talk about this when we get back." I laughed. She really thought I'd cave. "Yeah, no, you guys have a great trip. Though, oh, wait, you don't want any more." And then I hung up. The texts kept flooding in, angry, desperate, demanding. "Mom, I can't believe you do this to your own family. After everything we've done for you, we're stranded at the airport. Dad, fix this now. You're embarrassing us. This isn't funny." And Jake, the most infuriating of all, "Bro, just book another flight. You can afford it." That one made me see red. Like this was my problem to fix. Like I hadn't already paid for everything, only to be tossed aside like I didn't matter. So I took my time before responding. Then I sent my final text. "Oh, I absolutely can afford it. But you know what? I don't think I will." Blocked. Mom, Dad, Jake, all of them. As I set my phone down, a wave of peace washed over me. No more entitled demands. No more guilt trips. No more being treated like a wallet instead of son. For the first time in years, I had control, and it felt damn good. He had always been quiet and seething beneath the surface, unable to deal with circumstances that deviated from his expectations. Jake was bewildered and vulnerable. He had never been told no before, and that in itself was a new, disorienting experience for him. What made matters even more ironic was that our tickets were only for a one-way journey, a choice I had made deliberately. I had meticulously arranged a surprise return flight, a premium class journey complete with the best seats, exclusive lounge access, and all the trimmings, to be revealed on our final day in Japan. However, since they decided to replace me with Jake, that return trip evaporated, leaving them with no option but to purchase entirely new, costly international tickets. I almost found myself secretly imagining their stunned expressions when they eventually realized the full extent of their predicament. I had ordered takeout in peace, and for the first time, a sense of triumph washed over me, as if I had finally overcome the constant undervaluation I'd experienced for years. This surge of victory sparked an idea, something daring and mischievous. My parents, forever fixated on their image, were obsessed with maintaining a facade of perfection. They cared deeply about how everyone perceived them, friends, co-workers, even passing neighbors. They prided themselves on showcasing their ideal family, posting pictures of luxurious vacations, sumptuous dinners, and the hard-won comforts of life, all of which they never paid for, leaving the financial burden squarely on my shoulders. Now, armed with the means and the motive, I was determined to expose their hypocrisy. Sitting at my laptop, I opened Facebook and began crafting a post that would set the record straight. I hesitated, contemplating the tone. If I went overboard, they might twist my words and cast themselves as victims, as they had done countless times before. So I settled on something concise yet impactful. I typed, wishing them an amazing trip to Japan, subtly reminding them that I was originally supposed to accompany them. I referenced how, at the airport, they had chosen Jake over me, adding the detail about the non-refundable one-way tickets I had paid for. In just a few short sentences, I managed to convey a devastating truth with a sharp edge. Within minutes of posting, the comments began to pour in. Lisa remarked incredulously, noting that they had abandoned me at the last minute, while cousin Brandon called it outrageous. Even an old family friend couldn't help but question the integrity of my parents' actions. Notifications filled my phone, and a grin spread across my face as I realized that, at last, people were noticing the injustice I had endured. The situation escalated when a friend sent me a screenshot of my mother's attempted update, a self-congratulatory message about her well-deserved family trip to Japan, complete with hearts and all the usual trappings of her vanity. The comment on her posts were merciless. Someone pointed out that it was a trip I had paid for, and another accused her of abandoning me. Before long, her post had vanished entirely, a casualty of the overwhelming backlash. I was nearly laughing out loud, my amusement interrupted only by a sudden knock at the door. The hour was late, and I knew exactly who to expect. I set my drink aside, steeling myself before moving to answer. Through the small opening of my door, I recognized a familiar silhouette of my father. His posture was rigid, his hand buried in his pocket in that all-too-familiar gesture he made when he was about to attempt some half-hearted fix for a problem of his own making. Part of me considered ignoring him, letting him stew in his own silent fury, so that he might finally experience the helplessness I had felt for far too long. But I couldn't bring myself to do that. I needed to hear what he had to say. I opened the door, and without waiting for an invitation, he stepped right into my apartment. I closed the door behind him, the coldness in his eyes making it clear that he expected me to be at least halfway ready for the long journey to Japan by now. "We need to talk," he said, his voice taut as if he were trying to hold back a storm of anger. I crossed my arms and met his gaze with a mix of defiance and amusement. He scolded me for humiliating my mother, claiming that I had undermined her carefully crafted image, and demanded that I delete the damning Facebook post immediately. I couldn't help but laugh at his futile attempt to reassert control. "Humiliated your mother?" I retorted, questioning whether it was truly me or her own actions that had led to the situation. My father's jaw clenched in response, and after a moment of tense silence, he admitted, in a low and measured tone, that I had indeed upset the balance within our family. "You don't understand the position you've put us in," he said, his voice strained. I countered by reminding him that his family had always treated me as expendable, that I was merely an afterthought in their pursuit of perfection. For a brief moment, he opened his mouth to speak further, but then he stopped, clearly struggling with his next words. That hesitation was all the confirmation I needed. I had the upper hand now. I continued, accusing him of discarding me without a second thought, of treating me as though I were nothing. His hand twitched, as if he wanted to strike out in anger, but instead he took a deep, steadying breath and tried a softer, more manipulative tone. "Listen," he said, as if attempting to coax reconciliation from a place of shared pain. "I get that you're upset, and maybe we did mishandle things. But what you've done, this isn't the way our family deals with conflict." I couldn't help but smile in response, reminding him that his entire life had been a series of such double standards. "You're not my personal item," I declared, my voice laced with finality. For a moment, his expression faltered. Then he forced himself to speak. "You need to fix this now. We're leaving in a few hours." I calmly replied, "I think we're done here." And as I opened the door to signal his departure, he hesitated only briefly before leaving without another word. I shut the door, locking it firmly behind him, and allowed myself a moment to savor the silence that now filled my apartment. In that quiet space, a sense of calm and liberation finally settled over me. I knew my father was still out there, probably fuming and plotting his next move, but for the first time, I didn't care. I was no longer willing to be treated as their safety net or scapegoat. I sank back onto my couch, my phone in hand, and resumed reading the cascade of comments on my Facebook post. The overwhelming support from friends, extended family, and even distant acquaintances filled me with validation I had never received from those who claimed to care. It was as if the world had finally recognized the truth, that I was worth more than the expendable role I'd been forced into for so many years. Then, another message buzzed in from Jake. Though I hesitated for a moment, Curiosity pushed me to open it. His message was terse, accusing me of worsening an already delicate situation, claiming that I had ruined my mother's trip and that my actions had only intensified my father's anger. A bitter laugh escaped me as I crafted my reply. "It's funny," I wrote, "how you act as if you're the victim here when in reality, you were the one chosen to be the favored one. You should be grateful they picked you." I sent the message, feeling a mix of vindication and sorrow. In that moment, I recognized a painful truth. For years, I put my own needs aside while they exploited my loyalty and sacrificed my dignity, and now, as the fallout unfolded, I was finally reclaiming the respect that had been long denied. They valued their own comfort more than they valued me, so let them enjoy their trip. I wasn't going to fix a damn thing. As I hit send, a strange mix of emotions settled in my chest. Satisfaction, guilt, but mostly an overwhelming sense of freedom. Leaning back in my chair, I stared up at the ceiling, letting my thoughts drift through the wreckage of our so-called family dynamic. It had come to this. Years of favoritism, neglect, and unspoken resentments finally culminating in my refusal to play my assigned role any longer. Mom and Dad had always favored Jake, the youngest, the golden child, the one who never had to try. Meanwhile, I had been the reliable one, the responsible, self-sufficient, ever-accommodating child who met every demand without so much as a thank you. For years, I convinced myself that if I work harder, if I prove my worth, they'd finally see me. But the truth had always been in front of me. It was never about Jake being special. It was about me being convenient, a tool to be used and discarded whenever they pleased. Pushing myself up from my chair, I walked to the window, looking down at the quiet street below. The city lights flickered in the distance, but my mind was preoccupied with a different kind of illumination, the realization that, for the first time, I was the one in control. My phone buzzed again, jolting me from my thoughts. This time, it wasn't Jake. It was Mom. "I hope you're proud of yourself. You've ruined everything. You'll be sorry when we get back." I almost laughed. "You'll be sorry" was their go-to phrase whenever they didn't get their way. It was a threat, a guilt trip, a desperate attempt to keep me in line. I reread the message, letting it sink in. But the usual anger, the usual ache of disappointment didn't come. Instead, there was only clarity. They weren't upset because I had done something wrong. They were upset because they had lost control over me. I put my phone down and distracted myself with mindless scrolling, pretending I didn't care. But deep down, I knew this was the beginning of something new, a shift, a release. The game had changed, and for the first time in years, I held the cards. Another notification pulled me back in. A message from my cousin Rachel. "You deserve better. I'll be in town next week. Let's grab a drink. I'm so sorry they did that to you." A lump formed in my throat. I had spent so long feeling invisible, yet here was someone who saw me, someone who understood. I wasn't alone. Before I could fully process that, another text appeared. This one from Jake. "This is your fault. Mom's crying. I don't know what you thought you'd accomplish, but you've just made everything 10 times worse." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to fire back a sharp response. Something cutting. Something that would finally make him see. But I stopped myself. He was right about one thing. Everything was worse now. But it wasn't my doing. It was theirs. Taking a deep breath, I typed out a reply. "Jake, you're not the victim here. You've been handed everything on a silver platter, and you still don't get it. Don't bother calling or texting me again. I'm done." I hit send. And then nothing. No instant rebuttal, no dramatic comeback. Just silence. And the silence felt good. I powered off my phone, tossing it onto the couch before sinking into the cushions myself. The hardest part was over, cutting them off. And yet, all I felt was relief. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Family, friends. Word had spread. Mom and Dad were livid. But I couldn't bring myself to care. The drama had unfolded, and now all that was left was the waiting game. Would they ever understand? Would they ever admit they were wrong? Probably not. But that wasn't why I did this. This wasn't about forcing an apology or fixing something broken beyond repair. This was about me choosing myself for the first time in my life. Later that evening, I met up with Rachel. We sat for hours, talking, really talking. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. Like I wasn't just existing in the shadow of my family's dysfunction. Like my life could be more than that. A week passed before my phone rang again. Mom. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. I could ignore it. I had every right to. But something in me needed to hear what she had to say. Taking a steadying breath, I answered. Hello. Her voice was unsteady, a little broken. We've been talking, your dad and I, and we know we messed up. I almost laughed, but I let her speak. We shouldn't have treated you like this. It was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive us, but we want to make things right. I waited for the anger to flare up, for the familiar pull of obligation, but all I felt was nothing. I'm glad you're finally seeing it, I said, my voice calm, but I'm not coming back. I've been doing just fine without you, and I'm not going to let you drag me into your drama again. Silence. Then, in the most even tone I could manage, I added, Goodbye, Mom. And I hung up. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of peace, of freedom, of something I had never truly known before, closure. I don't plan on speaking to them again. I finally put myself first. But I wonder, was I too harsh? Or did I do the right thing?